There are some really competitive niches in blogging, but I've found that if you take a unique angle, there's no niche that's too competitive. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so really, like these are some of the most competitive niches out there. The very first one, cooking, specifically recipes.
Very, very competitive.
I Google recipes fairly often because we want to try new things. And every time I do, there's like 4,000 recipes that are all really similar, and it's hard to know which one I should do. That is ultimate competition.
Yeah, and I think before we keep diving in, I want to say that one of the best tactics that we found for getting into these really competitive niches is finding an angle.
Yeah.
And as we go through some of the examples, you're going to see some of the different angles we choose. But for this case, cooking, we want to niche down to recipes specifically, and then we chose the direction to cook for large groups and recipes for large groups. This is a subset of the niche where there's still tons and tons of traffic.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to start.
Totally. And you know, if I like recipes, right? Somebody watching this is going to say, yeah, but there's a lot of recipe blogs where you can input how many people you want to serve and it will scale up the recipe. Yes, but scaling up a recipe for stir fry that has to be cooked in a frying pan, scaling that up to 50 people is no small feat. Like, yes, you can scale up the ingredients, but what about the advice and the tips for, you know, I don't have that many burners on my stove.
Or how do you keep it warm after you cooked it?
And so there's nuances when you're talking about cooking for a large group that go beyond the amount of ingredients and stuff. And so we can address those nuances better if we have a site with content dedicated to that. The other thing I'd say too is like, most people think, okay, I want a niche, I love cooking, so I'm gonna make a recipe blog. Like, okay, you're taking the exact same angle as everybody else and hitting it head on.
I'm gonna tell the story of my grandma's best recipe. It's just like,
to win on SEO, I need my post longer, right? Okay, that's
not really.
Okay, so instead, we say, well, cooking for large groups, okay, recipes is a piece of that, but what about all the other stuff? And so that's the approach we've taken on our website about this.
And successfully so far.
Successfully so.
Yeah.
It's picking up.
I'm excited for that one.
Awesome.
Next up is fitness. This one is crazy competitive, but I think we've identified a pretty good way to get in there.
I think so too. So fitness, nutrition, even really anything in this space, these are probably some of the first things people successfully blogged about, and so many people are doing it. And I think the reason why so many are in it is because there's a ton of search volume around it. It's something where if it's something you've done successfully, a lot of other people are going to look to you like in your life. They're going to be like, oh wow, you've done that successfully, tell me how you did it. And so you have some authority on it, right, in your personal life. The problem is so many other people have done it too. So what we've talked about here was, what if you could start with a unique and interesting case study, specifically though on YouTube. Here's why YouTube for this one.
You're going to ruffle some feathers here, Ricky.
I know. Not everybody loves to hear about YouTube. When it comes to blogging, we have to write search-oriented content. You have to pick a search term and write information that answers that question. Just like interesting information does not perform well in search. It only really does well on social media where it's really shareable and stuff, right? YouTube is a fantastic discovery engine of interesting content that maybe also contains good information. So go to YouTube and then a case study. And the specific idea we had, I thought was pretty good.
I thought it would be a good one. So what if, for example, let's say Ricky and I want to start this channel. And let's say we wanted to experiment with different types of diets, and we want to do a case study on diets. Well, what if Ricky tried a keto diet for 3 months and I tried a totally vegetarian diet? And then we track everything super close for 3 months and then see what the results are in the end. And then maybe switch even after that just to see like what happened, and then continuing that trend on to be like, you're the tester of all things diet. You know, people are going to watch that because they're going to say, oh, I know this person, I see what they do, how well they keep track of all their progress and everything. And that kind of case study is not only great information, but it's super interesting to watch.
It's like the fit to fat to fit guy. Who was like, starts out fit and he's like, hey, you know what? I cannot relate to my clients. And so I'm going to get fat and then I'm going to get fit again. and then do it again. I mean, but
it's a crazy idea, but it gained him tons and tons of following.
And tons of authority.
Yes.
And so I think if you could do something, find a unique approach. It'd be cool if it was the two of us. What if we got 3 more of our friends in on it and tried like a whole bunch of different different diets or nutrition plans, and then maybe like a month in, one of the guys is like, I can't do this one anymore. The food's disgusting. I'm gonna pick a different one. That kind of information would be awesome. Whereas writing a blog post about how many calories you should have and how much of that should be carbs. Holy cow, the competition is enormous.
I think something else, a couple other things I'd mention is one, the type of data you could collect from this type of experiment could be turned into a blog post. Now it doesn't say anything about the competition that you'd run into. I think it'd still be incredibly competitive, but at least if you're immersed in it, it will be a little bit better because you'll have some amount of authority. The second thing that I would mention is that all of these ideas that we have, they're really just starting places.
That's true.
You wouldn't have to necessarily continue these ideas for the duration of the time in the niche. It's just really a crack to potentially get in.
Absolutely. It's a great point. The next one is travel. And then maybe even specifically travel deals, right?
Yes.
And so a lot of people want to be travel bloggers because, like, who doesn't want to
travel?
It's like, I'm going to travel and I'm going to get everything comped. Oh, and it's all a work expense. Everything I have to pay for is tax-free.
Great.
It's amazing. However, it's also extremely competitive. So what if instead of just like, oh, I'm going to tell you about travel deals. Okay, cool. Nice. Like everybody, there's so much of this information. What if instead you focused on special occasion travel? Travel specifically around weddings, around birthdays, other special events like, bachelor and bachelorette parties, special event travel. There's special event photography. There's people that do that specifically and that blog about that specifically. Special event travel is definitely a thing. And it's an angle that gives you a little bit of room.
And again, kind of similar to the cooking, there are just some nuances. You might just say, well, it's just traveling just like everything else. But there are nuances. I mean, you might be traveling with family. Maybe you're traveling with a ton of kids, extended family. Maybe you're traveling at weird times to accommodate groups. I mean, whatever the case may be, there's always nuances that when someone's looking for a question, they are looking for questions to address nuances. And so this is just a great example of that.
I think that's a great point. Just one nuance that comes to mind, just to give an example, would be, okay, we're doing this for an event. Okay, well, how many people does it take to be able to get a group rate at the hotel? We found when planning large events like a conference and you have 100 people coming to town, we can always get a group rate. But where's the break off there? I'm traveling with a group of people for a party. There's 20 of us. Now what can we do? And just how to negotiate those group rates, which hotels allow those. Different venues in different locations that are major destinations. There's just so many directions you can go without ever leaving the special occasion travel.
And that's a good point. With how big that niche is, you could probably niche down even to that point and probably be just fine there. The next one up here is fashion. Fashion is a big one. I don't think I could ever do fashion.
It's our
probably
thing.
not
We're
something
totally into that.
My polos that I wear every day. But we thought probably a good idea for this one would be to niche down. We thought to maybe a specific style, like a bohemian style. And then we thought, well, what if we go one step further and try and find the crack of thrifting, bohemian style clothes, and and all the different things that would come along with that. And after doing a little bit of research, it seemed like a potential crack in the industry.
And I think part of the reason this is such a good crack is that most people in the fashion industry, what they're doing is they're talking about the latest styles, which you need to be up on if you're going to blog about fashion. However, one of the main monetizations for them is they're either being sponsored by a brand or they're an affiliate for a brand or multiple brands. And so they're trying to push new clothing, new labels. So where's the monetization for thrift-based shopping? Well, monetization is the easy part. Even an ads-only blog in this or YouTube channel, I think would do really well. But it's not going to be hard to find additional monetization. There are going to be affiliate products, by the way. They might not be, $300 pairs of jeans, but instead there's going to be products that you would help people with to help them, to take the stuff from the thrift store and kind of turn it into that style, right? So there might be a little bit more DIY kind of stuff. There might be some types of tools and things that you would give that you would recommend to people. There's so much
Yeah.
patterns that you could sell them, all sorts of neat things that you could do to help people have a budget-friendly
Right.
fashion sense in a specific style.
Since this monetization is a little bit more difficult, or at first thought it seems a little more difficult, I think that honestly makes the crack that much better, because a lot of people just want to go for the easiest monetization.
Yep.
They think monetization first, and then they think really content and user second.
Right.
And so if you think about content first and user first, the monetization can just fall into place when you get there, because once you have an audience, you can monetize.
The huge problem with monetization first is it leads you down the same paths as everybody else. And without traffic, it doesn't matter how well monetized your content is. If you get 1,000 people a month to your blog, I don't care how well monetized it is. You're not going to earn very much. If you get 100,000 people to your blog and it's monetized a quarter as well as the other fashion blogs, you probably earn a lot more, because most of them, all but a few, are struggling to get anywhere near that level of traffic.
Next up, we have medical niche.
Wow.
Medical, it's a big field.
Anything like health.
Anything health, yeah. So we decide, let's niche down to parenting. That's very YMYL. I'd still consider in the medical space. And then we said, well, let's go a step further. What about a site for parents who have adopted kids?
Right.
I think it would be a great niche.
Do you think that niche has any specific nuances that are different from parents who only have biological kids?
I don't think so.
Probably not. It's like this is what we call a distinction without it. I'm totally kidding. No, there are.
It's very different.
I've been around a lot of this. Those of you who don't know this about me, but I have 6 adopted siblings, and there are some very specific nuances. And I think that's fantastic. I think it's a great topic that's probably underserved, because most people in the parenting space, they're talking about having a baby, and then nursing and taking care of that baby and raising that child. And there are some very specific nuances when you're dealing with an adopted child.
Well, and even adoption sites, a lot will focus on the adoption process before you adopt. Well, what about the many years after you adopt? It's a very underserved space, just from the amount of research we've done. So great niche.
The next one, finance. Personal finance is just also very, very crowded, in part because it's a very valuable niche. Even ads in this niche just pay super well, because these are people who are looking for ways to make more money. And so so then let's go a step further and investing. All right, investing. For most people, there's not a whole lot to say, for one. So it just doesn't feel like there's a whole lot to say. And then beyond that, it's highly competitive still. And so what if we took it a step further and focused on one more angle of this? And so everyday investing strategies, which are even simpler, for lower to low middle class, even kind of regular middle class type people.
This one is so exciting to me, because people who are talking about investing, maybe not on purpose, but the audience that they're really targeting, it's people who have already probably understood something about investing, and they're probably in a financial position where they think they can invest. The cool thing about trying to target the lower or lower middle class is that a lot of people in this situation or this space, they don't think about investing. When they hear the word investing, their minds are turned off. They think, oh, that's something that
they're imagining someone in a suit with a fancy tie. And,
Yeah. And so to run a blog or a YouTube channel would be great for this one. Again, you don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to be an investment master. You could be someone in the lower or lower middle class to run a blog and just take people on a journey with you as you're learning something. And I think for this one specifically, and with a lot of them, it would be really rewarding, because you're helping people figure out and kind of understand that there is something here for them.
And this one, you could say, I just said that when we talk about investing, there's really only so much to say, unless you're going to really get into the weeds. Like Motley Fool, right? They're talking about specific stock picks and stuff all the time. But regular investing strategies for most people is going to be very simple. In this case, you're going to even simplify it even more. So what am I going to blog about, right? I can outline the whole strategy in a post, right? But I don't think, if you focus on the topic of investing strategies for everyday, whatever, that type of search isn't what's going to drive traffic to you, because that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for how do I change my financial situation? How do I bring in more money? How do I get out of debt? That type of thing. Now, some of those are pretty competitive too, and we're going to have to break down and find specific search queries. But I think most of the content on this website, YouTube channel, whatever it is that you plan to do with this, needs to focus a lot more around a lot of those other things, those behaviors.
Yeah.
How to bring in that extra $100 a month so you actually have a little bit to invest. And I do think it's going to focus a lot on encouragement. And that's where a YouTube channel is going to do really well. Like if you can focus on that encouragement piece where it's like, okay, for the next 30 years, this is going to look slow.
Right.
But if you're doing this even at $50 a month, when it comes time to retire, you could actually retire.
Right.
And, all the people that lived around you are going to look at you and be like, whoa, how do you have so much money? And you're going to say, well, I squirreled away $50 a month or $100 a month. So I think focusing on that behavior and the motivation and showing them those numbers and what that looks like over time, I think you can do so much good with this. Great topic.
Yeah. Next one is internet marketing.
It's not competitive.
And not competitive at all. You guys just do it.
Take it off the list.
No, but this one specifically, we thought that it would be a really, really good one. Well, for a couple of reasons, I think. It's generally very competitive, but we've identified one space that is a lot less competitive in the internet marketing space.
Yeah, so news, for one, is a big one.
Yep.
With internet marketing, obviously, we need to understand a fair amount of what's going on in the SEO world. What's Google doing? What's YouTube doing even? Like, internet marketing can envelop all of that, podcasting, everything. So getting found, that search engine optimization and stuff. But most people in internet marketing aren't like super technical SEO people, and they don't need a lot of the stuff that really the SEO niche is talking about.
Right.
But we do need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And people like me who are teaching internet marketing skills, I can focus only a certain amount of my time on current events. And we do try to share them here. That's not what this channel is mostly about. And so what we find is there are really only a few sites that we actually find to be reliable source of information.
Yep.
And then, so current events in blogging, current events with YouTube. I mean, you could really cover all of that, and I think do pretty well. But even just picking one, I think is a pretty.
And
big
again,
space.
I think this is still probably a fairly competitive space since there are some larger sources there. And being in news, it's a lot of work. You have to keep up on a lot of things, but that being said, I think there's a lot of traffic there.
Yeah.
And so while the competition may be a little bit medium high, I think that the traffic could definitely make it worth it.
The other thing with news is there are a lot of people who like to look to multiple sources, right? Because a lot of what we see with news isn't just factual news.
Right.
It's assessment, which is usually filled with a lot of opinion too. And so that's not unique to just like political news.
Right.
SEO news is the same way.
Very much.
Oh, this changed in Google. Here's the way I interpret that and what I think it's going to impact on websites going forward. And so if you want to provide that analysis too, like a lot of people aren't just going to stop at one news source. When there's an algorithm update, I want to know what everybody thinks about it, not just one person.
Sorry, one more point that you made me think. A YouTube channel specifically would be great for this because if you get to the point where you're well known in the industry, people want to hear your opinion on these types of things.
Yeah.
And so they're going to go maybe to their 3 or 4 people that they always go to, and you're going to be on one of those stops. So it's a great spot.
All right, next one would be like a lifestyle blog. I want to be an influencer.
I hesitated to put this one on the list because that feels so vague.
Yeah,
it's like,
right?
oh, I just want to make a video or a blog about my life. Well, we know that hasn't worked for a while, making a blog about your life, unless you want your grandma to read it.
Yeah. So what do we do? Like, what is it that makes some work really well?
Yes.
The thing that pretty much all of them have in common is they're all usually good-looking people, but that's only part of it. The main thing is there's something unique about their situation.
Yep.
There's something unique about what they're into, but it's also something that's kind of like relatable. Either it's like it's relatable because it's something that I'm experiencing too,
right?
Or it's relatable because it's something I dream about experiencing, and for now I'm just going to live vicariously through what I see you doing. And I think that is why it works. There's a guy I went to college with who, he sold his company in his 20s, sold all their stuff, and they started just traveling the world. And they took all the money from the sale of the business and just put it away, invested it. They sold their stuff, and the idea was, let's live for as long as we can on what we made from our stuff.
Right.
traveling the world
Yeah,
with
that's
a couple of little kids.
Very cool.
And they started a YouTube channel and blog to go along with this thing. They got a big following of people. Why? Because how many of us would not love to just sell all of our worldly garbage
Yeah.
and just go live life and gain, your kids gain an education around the world.
Right.
And I don't think they actually ever stopped. I mean, their life has changed a bit over time, but like they're still out there doing really cool things,
Yep.
and people just want to experience that through them.
Another really relatable kind of example, there's a cruising channel that my wife watches. And it's of someone who doesn't have a ton of subscribers, but they live in Florida, and they get season passes to Disney World. And they just, on most of their vlogs are them at Disney World for Disney lovers. But some of their vlogs are just them shopping, and they're just doing all these things. But it started with a common interest or a common, something that other people wished they could do. They wished that they could go to Disneyland or go on cruises. And, that's the type of thing that you got to start with. You got to start with something relatable, kind of searchable I think would probably be the easiest way to do this.
Yeah.
And then eventually, like your example, you can kind of branch out.
Right. So you mentioned searchable. Like if we're going to do this on a blog, we have to have a lot of our content around, how to do this, how to get into this. An example here we have in this space would be like if you're doing musical theater as a family.
Yes.
And so it's like how to, just get into it. I look at some of the musical theater stuff around here, and it's like I don't even know how to audition.
Right.
Turns out like there's like a website where you can register on to create a profile so that and talk about your experience and stuff so that you might be able to get invited to an audition. Like there's a lot of how-to in here, right?
Yeah.
And so for someone who's interested in it, there's probably a lot of questions around that. We're going to cover that on the blog.
Yeah.
On a YouTube channel, it's a lot easier to,
It is a lot
to have
easier.
that connection-based content.
Yep.
And so I think that's probably where I'd put most of the vlogger, influencer kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's really tough to do with a
one's
blog.
tough one, especially now.
Yeah, with a YouTube channel and Instagram in this case probably too. I think you have a lot better shot there.
And last up on our list is technology. This is a huge niche, very competitive. So we thought, well, what if we niche down into reviews / tutorials, but specifically torture testing.
Right.
I think torture tests are really cool, something that I love watching, but for specifically phones and that sort of thing, there's not that many channels doing that. And so if you could find kind of a unique angle there, do torture tests, and then if you could make a little bit of investment into your channel, and when Apple or some other big phone company comes out with a new phone, you go buy it and you destroy it. And then you can make videos or write how-to guides about how to fix the phone when you're
How do you
done.
replace the screen?
So this one would be very competitive, but I think it could be possible.
Part of the issue with the competition here is there's just a massive amount of content, and Google has to kind of sift through all that. And most of that competition is, as far as I'm concerned, not legit. A lot of them are
Very
just
good
like,
point.
hey, here's the iPhone 13 versus whatever the latest Samsung phone is, and here's all the specs.
They're reading specs
You're
off
like,
their computer.
Okay, cool, thanks. Again, that's not hard for me to do on my own, and it provides very little additional value.
Right.
And so what I want to see is, from someone who's actually been using it, how do they compare?
Right.
And so I think if you're going to be doing any sort of like tech reviews and tutorials, you got to get your hands on gear.
Yeah.
And it's going to require an upfront investment, but if you're going to be the one willing to do that, it's not usually going to take very long before that investment's paying off. And next thing you know, you got all sorts of seed money to do those kinds of reviews going forward.
Yep.
Like on YouTube in particular, I don't have a problem spending a couple $1,000s for a single video.
Yeah.
If I have confidence that is going to lead to growth.
Yeah.
And it often does.
Yep. And I think, again, this is one very specifically where I think a YouTube channel would be pretty much crucial to get that initial boost, because right now getting that kind of traffic on YouTube would just be a lot easier than starting off with your blog.
Yeah, I think so too. And on YouTube, if you are going to go the route of actually like getting the product, on YouTube, it's so easy to show that.
Yes.
On a blog, it's like, it could still be faked, right? You rip those images off from somebody else.
Right.
On a YouTube video, it's like, nope. And if you're going to do torture testing, it's just fun
It's
to
just
watch
fun.
people drop
Yeah.
phones from 2 stories and that type of thing.
Yep.
So that's it. That's how we would break into some of the toughest niches out there. Now, if you're picking a niche and you're trying to get started with blogging, there's a couple things that you're going to need to know. And one of those things is about hosting.
Yes.
You're going to need a web host. And there are a lot out there that do totally different things and offer totally different services. And if there's one thing I know about people that will recommend hosts, is everybody has their opinion, and it's not going to match anybody else's opinion. So if you want to hear ours and hear the guidance that we have, I do want to recommend another video that will be coming out shortly on this channel. And as soon as it's out, I'll link to it here. You'll be able to see it, and you can go watch that video. If you want to see our latest recommendations, it's fully updated at incomeschool.com/tools. You can see our recommendations for everything. Software products, gear, all the stuff that we use to generate this channel, our blogs, everything. It's all there.
And
check that out.
one more thing, don't forget to comment, because we are still running our comment contest, and the end of the year is coming. So get your get your comments in there. We love to read them, whatever you have to say.
Let me show you what I mean. How's that, Nathan?
Yeah, that was pretty good. But why did we have to come out here for that?
I don't know. People tell me they like it when we go outside.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.